At the side of a Japanese toilet seat, there may be a narrow control panel with icons for a rear wash, a front wash. At the side of a Japanese toilet seat, there may be a narrow control panel with icons for a rear wash, a front wash, water pressure, nozzle position, seat temperature, water temperature, a dryer, and sometimes a button that plays a masking sound. For many Americans, the first reaction is simple. Why does a toilet need this many controls? The surprising answer is that these buttons are not really about making a toilet complicated. They are there because the toilet is doing more than the familiar American setup usually does. In a typical U.S. bathroom, the toilet is largely one purpose. Use it, flush it, and reach for toilet paper. The controls are physical and obvious. In Japan, many public toilets include an electronic bidet seat, often called a washlet-style seat, that changes the experience from a single action into a set of adjustable comfort choices. The most important buttons are usually the wash functions. One option is intended for rear washing, and another is intended for front or feminine washing. A small nozzle extends from inside the seat area and sprays water. The nozzle is normally hidden when it is not in use, which is why a visitor may initially see a panel full of symbols, but not understand what mechanism those symbols control. Then come the adjustments. Water pressure can be gentle or stronger. The spray can move slightly forward or backward. On some seats, the water can pulse or move back and forth. These settings exist because people are different. What feels comfortable to one person may feel too intense, too cool, or poorly positioned for someone else. That is the first big contrast with familiar American life. Instead of treating bathroom comfort as something solved outside the toilet, with paper and whatever the room happens to provide, the Japanese electronic seat often puts those choices directly at the point of use. The heated seat is another part of the adjustment panel that can surprise visitors. In a public restroom, especially during cooler weather, a warm seat can feel unexpectedly luxurious if you are used to a standard unheated seat. But it also explains another button. If the seat can be heated, it needs a temperature setting. If the wash uses water, that water may also have a temperature setting. What looks like excessive complexity is often just the control surface for features that are not common on a basic American toilet. The dryer is perhaps the feature that creates the biggest expectation gap. After a wash, some seats offer warm air. A first-time user may assume this works like a hand dryer and will finish instantly. Usually, it is better understood as an optional finishing feature, not a magical replacement for every other habit. Some people use it. Others still prefer toilet paper after washing. The point is not that everyone uses every function. The point is that the seat gives them the option. And then there is the button that can seem most mysterious, the sound button. It may play a steady water-like sound or another masking sound. This is often called an etiquette or privacy feature. In a shared public restroom, it can help cover bathroom noises without requiring a person to repeatedly flush the toilet just for sound. For an American visitor, that button can feel almost absurd at first because it addresses a social discomfort that most U.S. toilets simply leave unaddressed. The layout can also be confusing because Japanese toilets often communicate through icons instead of long English labels. A stylized seated figure, water droplets, arrows, waves, and temperature symbols may make sense once you know the system, but not necessarily before. Some newer panels include English, and some use very clear pictograms. Others still require a moment of careful decoding. There is one button worth recognizing immediately: stop. It is usually marked with a square or a clear stop symbol, and it stops the active wash or drying function. If you remember only one control before trying an unfamiliar panel, make it that one. The apparent cockpit effect also comes from where the controls are placed. They may be attached to the seat, mounted on the wall, or built into a small remote beside the toilet. A wall-mounted panel can look like a control center because it is separate from the fixture itself. But when you break it down, it is often just a compact set of choices: wash, adjust, dry, stop. Not every public toilet in Japan has every one of these features. You can still encounter simple, conventional toilets, and the design and controls vary by location. The useful expectation is not that every restroom will be high-tech. It is that an unfamiliar toilet may offer functions Americans do not routinely expect, and the buttons are usually there to make those functions personal rather than automatic. That is why the comparison to a cockpit is funny but slightly misleading. A cockpit has controls because a pilot has to operate a complex machine safely. A Japanese toilet panel has controls because it is trying to let an ordinary person fine-tune an ordinary private routine: temperature, pressure, position, drying, and sometimes privacy. Once you see that, the panel stops looking like a test you can fail. Start with the wash icon if you want to try it. Use the adjustment buttons only if needed, and remember the stop button. The rest is not a technological mystery. It is a different answer to a very familiar daily task. And that same idea shows up elsewhere in Japan. Ordinary public spaces often reveal small design choices that Americans may not notice until they need them. Next, we can look at another everyday Japanese feature that changes what a simple errand feels like: the surprisingly useful convenience store.